Welcome to the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, where sports cards and pop culture meet the 1984 All-Star Game. I am your host, Rabbi David Spinrad. Welcome. This is episode 19, Cocaine, Heart Attacks, and the Pirate Parrot. Man, you never know what rabbit holes you might find yourself down, and the more I explore them, the more I realize that there's just no there. There's no there to get to. In fact, the there that you think you're going to one day reach ends up being quite different than you ever imagined. So my advice, enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, take your time. Smell the roses, dig around, find fun stories to tell yourself and to share with friends like you. Appreciate you tuning in. This is going to be a fun one today. I found some unexpected little tidbits along the way. So, game's about to start. But before we jump into that, I realize I have a little reader comment to follow up on. My good buddy Gordon, he said, listen, since you invited the feedback, I'm going to share with you that not only was Don Newcomb not the first the first African American MVP, he was not the first. That was Jackie Robinson in 1949. He was not the second. That was Campy Roy Campanella in 1951. He was not the third. That was Campy again in 1953. He was not the fourth. That again was Campy in 1955. He wasn't even your boy. He says he wasn't even the Say Hey Kid who took home the MVP, of course, in 1954. So he was not the first. He was not the second. He was not the third. He was not the fourth. He was not the fifth. But darn it, Don Newcomb was the sixth African American to win the Most Valuable Player and the first to win MVP and Cy Young in that Cy Young inaugural season of 1956. Newcomb was also the first African American to win 20 in the show. So thank you, Gordon, for setting me straight. One thing I can promise you is there'll be plenty of factual errors coming from me, probably in each and every episode. I'm sort of a big picture guy. I do research to a certain degree, but some of that stuff, I just throw it out there and count on good buddies like you. So thanks again. All right, game is about to start. Camera flash. I'm cracking up because I've been telling you that for like 10 episodes, and it's true. Game is just about to start. Camera flashes. You have the outgoing commissioner, Bowie Kuhn, and the incoming commissioner, Peter Ueberroth. A word about Peter Ueberroth. Peter Ueberroth was fabulously wealthy. Peter Ueberroth had this like haircut, like a rich guy haircut. And I noticed it when I was watching the video. It's sort of, and there's like the breeze blowing. And of course, Bowie has that old school, like slicked back 60s kind of hair thing. But Ueberroth is a man of a different generation. He's got a $250 haircut. And just the way the wind is blowing it, and Ueberroth has that tan. Everything about this dude said, money, 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 money. So Ueberroth, Al mentions, is about to be a very busy man because Ueberroth, before he takes over as the commissioner of Major League Baseball, is the chairman of the 1984 U.S. Olympic Organizing Committee. He's about to be very busy. He is one of the main, if not the main person responsible for bringing the Summer Games to Los Angeles in 1984. Although he was born and raised in Northern California, Ueberroth is just one of those SoCal guys, right? Just like Jeff Kent, born in California, but were you surprised? I wasn't surprised when he moved to Texas. Jeff Kent belongs in Texas. Ueberroth belongs in Southern California with his rich guy tan and his expensive haircut blowing in the breeze ever so slightly. Peter Ueberroth made his money in travel. Big, second biggest travel agency in North America. before he takes over as commish. He runs those games. Huge success in LA, even without the Eastern Bloc, even without the Soviets. That was Here's to You, Mary Lou. That was Carl Lewis. That was MJ the first time around. Those summer games end, and Uberoth in October 7th, 1984, takes over as MLB's commissioner for Bowie Kuhn, who succeeds him when he finally steps down April 1st, 1989. None other than A. Bartlett Giamatti. Giamatti has a very short tenure. He dies, I believe, in October of that same year. He dies of a heart attack. That's a theme in this show. I mean, a lot of people in this episode who died because of a heart attack. First one is A. Bartlett Giamatti, Bart Giamatti, father of Paul Giamatti of Sideways fame. Giamatti was a cool owner. He was a president at Yale and a poet and a just very literate guy, and just really just seemed like a really neat guy. It was sad that he died. He was really a fan at heart. He dies actually only days after Rose accepts the lifetime ban for gambling on Major League Baseball, for gambling on the Cincinnati Reds. He accepts the lifetime ban. I believe 8 days after the ban is when Giamatti dies. The Rose investigation actually begins under Uberoth. A lot of big things happen under Uberoth. The 1980s have such a dark side to them, right? So the 60s, before my time, intense time of social change, but they also kind of seem like they're having a really good time. I'm just talking about civil rights in Vietnam. I'm kind of talking like flower power and free love and, I don't know, experimentation of all kinds. None of that was to be my destiny. The 60s, peace, love, and happiness gave way to the 70s. Sort of the me generation. Those same people started putting themselves first, which I'm just saying, I was a kid, but man, it led to the 1980s, the conspicuous consumption of the 1980s, the glorification of yuppie culture. Gordon Gekko, greed is good, and a lot of that showed up in baseball. One of the things that Uberoth actually is most famous for is he is the one who really takes MLB to the next level as a business. Again, he's a rich guy. He's a rich guy with a rich guy's mindset. He thought the owners, he called them, he said, listen, you're idiots for willing to lose millions of dollars to win a World Series. You know how we just all the time hear, official sponsor of Major League Baseball, right? MasterCard, the official credit card of Major League Baseball. Budweiser, the official beer of Major League Baseball. Taco Bell, the official quick service restaurant of Major League Baseball. That official sponsor, that incredible explosion in revenue, that's Peter Uberoth. Peter Uberoth is also hugely responsible for all the collusion that took place in the mid-80s, 85, 86, 87, where the owners got together and refused to sign players to the contract and to the money that they deserved. I remember nobody wanted Kirk Gibson. I think that was 85. No one was signing anybody. I remember that I think it was Fisk was going to jump somewhere. And it didn't happen. You know which one I absolutely remember? I remember nobody wanted Andre Dawson. Dawson took a 1-year deal with the Cubs. What was that? I think that was 87. Yeah, 87. He goes out and wins MVP. I mean, no one wants to sign Andre Dawson. So MLB actually, it comes back to bite him in the behind. And if you ever look into a lot of the labor strife in the 90s, they actually point back to the behavior of the owners during that 85-86 collusion stretch that led to the labor strife, that led to the players saying, you know what, I'm going to get mine. And are they overpaid? Oh my God. Yeah, by normal people's standards, they're ridiculously paid. But we're talking about millionaires and billionaires. So, I don't know. The rich eating the very rich. So you had crazy big money in the 1980s, the collusion, the massive free agency, the revenue from official sponsors. You also had quite a bit of drugs in the 1980s. Talking about money, talking about conspicuous consumption. That's a really hard thing for me to say. Conspicuous consumption. Talking about money. You're talking about cocaine. 1980s, huge time for coca. Not just in MLB, but in society in general. You got to remember, early 80s, coke is, maybe late 70s, it's totally socially acceptable. Time magazine writes about it as the new in thing. People are bumping lines at the disco. It is the thing. It's also really expensive, significantly more expensive than it is today, right? Even with adjusted dollars, it's way, way cheaper. I think it's $100 a gram back then. It's apples and oranges to what somebody pays today. So most infamously, the 1980s and cocaine are marked by the 1985 Pittsburgh drug trials. That's under Uberoth's watch, you might remember. Pittsburgh Pirates, Dale Berra, Lee Lacy, Lee Mazzilli, John Milner, my guy, the Cobra, Dave Parker, Rod Scurry, here comes our second heart attack. 1986, dies of a cocaine-induced heart attack. Rod Scurry, remember that Fu Manchu mustache? Other players from across MLB, Willie Mays Aikens, you might remember him, KC Royals. They had a little coca problem in the KC clubhouse. Aikens later is convicted for selling crack cocaine. 1994, gets 20 years. Why? Well, because of racist drug laws. Because if you sell crack and you sell cocaine, they're the same drugs. Poorer people, oftentimes people of color, take crack because it's more intense and it costs much less. So sentencing was at a point in the 80s, early 90s under Clinton, it was 100-1, right? If you sold crack versus powder cocaine, the sentencing was 100 times more brutal. It's gotten a little better. It's still about 12-1, but still, it's an example of how racism exists and persists in our society today. Who else was doing coke and on the stand testifying? Well, Vida Blue, another one of my favorite guys. How about Enos Cabell? Keith Hernandez, another one of my guys. Hackman Jeffrey Leonards. Tim Raines, you heard it here. You already know he has confessed to it many times. The reason he slid head first was he used to keep a little 1-gram bullet in the back pocket of his uniform. Lonnie Smith, Alan Wiggins, who was in an early episode, all of them testified. All of them eventually were granted immunity. Their suspensions were commuted for testifying, for paying fines, and for performing community service. Let's take a pause and let that all settle in. Baseball had a drug problem, had a big drug problem, because baseball is rich people with lots of money and free time and lots of people who want to get close to them. Man, oh man, I can't believe that more baseball players didn't do coke back then. When Hernandez testifies, he actually says, I think he says a third of Major League Baseball does blow. He later tries to backpedal from it, but why? It probably was true. So anyway, here's a little card action. Take a pause from the Pittsburgh drug trial. Let's look at this 2004 Topps fan favorites. It's modeled after the 85 Topps set. There it is in all his tan and rich guy hair glory, the commissioner, Peter Uberoth. Oh my God. One of the most fun parts of this pod is going on eBay and finding random cards and honestly seeing how little I can pay. This card is a 99 center. I think ended up, the guy just wouldn't give up, and no one was selling this card. I think I spent $4 on it. Got the 85 Topps look. Not the most flattering picture of Peter Ubroth, but that's the card I have to show you. All right. So we've talked a little bit about cocaine. We've talked about the Pittsburgh drug trials. We've talked about 2 of the heart attacks we'll mention in this episode. And now we're going to talk about my favorite part of the episode. At the heart of the Pittsburgh drug trials was the Pirate Parrot. The Pirate Parrot was implicated in being a middleman for the players, both the Pirates and the teams that would come through town. His name was Kevin Koch. He wore the pirate uniform. He wore the parrot costume. He admitted to selling cocaine, doing cocaine with the players, partying with them. He was a middleman, and he also admitted to doing some blow in the costume during games. Let's bring up the first incarnation of the Pittsburgh Pirates. There he is after a late night of partying. This is like an SNL skit here. This is the skinny version of the Pittsburgh Pirate. Because why? Because he had no appetite from all the drugs he was taking. And who is he partying with? Man, cocaine must make you make some strange decisions. Because there on his left, well, that's David Lander, legendary Pirate fan, and also most famous for playing Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley. And who is that on his right? Well, if you got Squiggy on your left, then you must have Lenny on your right. That's Michael McKean. So there is the skinny version of the Pittsburgh Pirates after a late night of partying with Lenny and Squiggy, wearing glasses during the daytime. Man, oh man, the Pittsburgh Parrot is doing blow. I don't know what to tell you about this. You cannot make this stuff up. You came to talk nostalgia. I'm talking the seedy underbelly of Major League Baseball. Pause and let that sit in. I got to take a breath. Just imagine, some mom, some dad taking their kid to a ball game and the Pittsburgh Pirate Parrot is gacked out of his mind on blow, running up and down the aisle, super intense. Like, relax, man. It's like a middle of the week game in June. It's all right. No, man, this game was amazing. Good golly. So it wasn't long after the Pittsburgh drug trials that the Pirates actually made a change. They made a change. Well, Kevin Koch had to look for another job, and they actually, thank God, the Pirate Parrot got sober. I'm going to show you a card, 1993 Donruss. There it is, the Pirate Parrot, mascot madness. They actually redesigned the look of the Pirate Parrot. Let's go back to the first one. You see him, skinny legs, kind of strung out, wearing glasses. Now let's go to the new version. Kind of made him sillier, took the glasses off, made him chubby, because nothing says safe like a little chubbiness. I don't know. That was part of the explanation I found. So they changed him, right? My take is on the Pirate got sober and he got back to a healthy weight, found a normal appetite. Oh my God. Whew. All right. Pittsburgh drug trials. Pirate Parrot. Man, oh man, oh man. What's one last thing I want to say is, like I said, I'm a big Dave Parker fan. I never really quite appreciated how much coke hurt him professionally. His numbers dipped during those cocaine years. They dipped considerably. He's dealing with injuries. He's dealing with knee problems, playing on the turf at Three Rivers. But really and truly, he's doing a lot of blow, and his numbers suffer. He gets out of Pittsburgh, goes to Cincinnati, gets sober, and his numbers bounce back. He actually almost wins an MVP. Take a look at the numbers before the trough and peak cocaine, and he goes back. So who knows? He's a sentimental favorite for the Hall of Fame for me, but I'll admit the numbers don't bear out. But the correlation between cocaine and his performance definitely do. Coming back, moving past the Pittsburgh drug trials, Al Michaels is on the mic. He lays out the dimensions. We're 335 down the left field and right field lines, 365 in the gaps to left center and right center, and 400 feet to straightaway center field. Al continues, and the umpires. At home plate, Big Lee Wire. You might remember Lee made an appearance in an earlier episode of the Rated Rabbi podcast and holding back Andujar in a fight. So Big Lee Wire is behind the plate. Wire was a very, very respected umpire. He was behind the plate on September 11th, 1985 at Riverfront Stadium as Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's career hit record, hit number 4,192 off of Eric Shaw. As if that isn't cool enough, Lee Wire was umpiring at third base on April 8th, 1974, when Hank Aaron passed Babe Ruth with his 715th home run. Talk about being near history. Wire's there when the home run and the hit records get broken. July 4th, 1988. Our boy Lee is hanging out with his good buddy Ed Montague, also big league umpire. Ed Montague lived in San Mateo. I wonder if Ed ever went to Stu Miller's liquor store. So he's hanging out on the 4th of July with Ed Montague. They're having a cookout, having a good time, maybe having a beer or two. Wire is out there in the yard, in the driveway, playing basketball with Montague's boys. Right? They're shooting, they're dribbling. Wire's feeling it, right? Draining jumpers, blocking the kid shots, just having a time of his life. Another heart attack. Heart attack number 3 in this episode. Lee Wire dies of a massive heart attack in Ed Montague's driveway, July 4th, 1988. First, we talk about the Giamatti heart attack. Then we talk about Rod Scurry's heart attack. And third, we talk about Lee Wire's heart attack. Just a confluence of details and arcana on this episode, friends. Umpiring at first base is Al Clark. Al Clark, Jewish. Al Clark dreamed of becoming a rabbi. Many are called, but few are chosen. Al. So Al Clark becomes a MLB umpire. Not a bad gig. What I remember Al Clark most for was he was indicted in 2004 for collectibles fraud. All right, your fellow collectors. Al Clark conspired with another guy to sell baseballs that he signed certificates of authenticity that they were game used. One in particular I remember was David Wells' Perfect Game. Remember Dave Wells threw a perfecto? And he and his accomplice, they took brand new Major League Baseballs and they rubbed them up with that MLB Mississippi mud and they sold them with certificates of authenticity signed by Al Clark. And Al Clark got busted. Ends up doing 4 months in jail. Second base umpire, one of my favorite umpires, Dutch Rennert. Remember Dutch Rennert? He that guy who, like, if there would be a strike on a right-handed hitter, he would come up and then he would lunge to his left or his right, lunge with his left leg and a karate chop, big strike, big old strike, karate chop, leg lunge. Love Dutch Rennert. A little bit different technique if it was a left-handed hitter, more like a squat lunge, but you know who Dutch Rennert is. Third base umpire Durwood Merrill, famous for writing his autobiography entitled "You're Out and You're Ugly Too." In right field, Rocky Rowe, who in 1996, Rocky Rowe took a leave of absence from MLB to do some serious weight loss. Remember back in the day when like every umpire was just portly, it seemed like. They were hefty. All right, let me show you an example. I have one to show you right here. This is a 1990 T&M umpire card of Eric Gregg. Eric Gregg probably hit 4 bills at some point. Remember Eric Gregg in that 1997, I think it was a World Series, the Marlins, and they just kept getting wider and wider and wider in strike zone for Livan Hernandez. The ball was like 2 feet outside, and Gregg's like, yeah, that's a strike. Oh, man, big Eric Gregg. I remember Eric Gregg once driving out of a game at Candlestick, being at the gate. They're driving, he rolled down the window and looked at all of us and said, I am Mookie Wilson. I don't know why I remember that. He had good nature, not a great umpire. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. Back in the day, umpires were portly. It kind of became this way of being. Eric Gregg, Rocky Rowe. None of them, however, tipped the scales quite like John McSherry. John McSherry, you might remember, was the impetus for Rocky Rowe taking that leave of absence in 1996 to do some serious weight loss. Dateline, April 1st, 1996, opening day in Cincinnati. The first game used to always start in the Natty. It's a holiday there. I remember when we lived there, and it was just terrific. Teachers would get dressed up for school, and the whole city was at a parade. A big deal. Super fun. Opening day in Cincinnati. Right? Game starts. McSherry is behind home plate. Big John was 6'2", and according to Richie Phillips, the head of the Umpires Association, weighed 385 pounds. Opening day, Cincinnati hosting the Montreal Expos. 7 pitches in, McSherry says several words. We don't know what he said, but he says something to Reds catcher Eddie Taubensee. Starts waving the second base umpire in, ostensibly to take over for him. McSherry turns, takes several steps towards the Reds' dugout. And if you remember Apocalypse Now, towards the end where they're taking out Kurtz and it's juxtaposed with that sacrifice of the water buffalo and just, it was like that. It's terrible. As I remember it to this day, I've seen it and I can't forget it. And it didn't help. I shouldn't have gone back and watched it again. McSherry stumbles and face plants right into the turf at Riverfront. Marge shot, by the way, was not sensitive. I think at one point she says, I feel cheated, is what she said. Thanks a lot, Marge shot. So McSherry dies of a massive heart attack, and Rocky Rowe's like, whoa, we got to stay away from the Sizzler buffet. I am going on sabbatical, fat farm, lose the weight. It's so different, right? Back in the day, there were the NL umpires and the AL umpires, and they were doing their own thing. And I think around 2000 is when they just had major league umpires. There was no more NL and AL anymore. And umpires used to be portly, like I said. And now they're kind of all look like Ed Hockley. Remember Ed Hockley, the referee from the NFL, like that jacked ref. He like flex, big guns. They're all quite fit and young. But back then, umpires were a portly bunch. That's our 4th heart attack. Didn't know we were going to have 4 of them. But man, we did. We talked cocaine. We talked about the heart attacks of Bart Giamatti, the heart attack of Rod Scurry, the heart attack, oh my God, I feel like I'm like the angel of death, the heart attack of Lee Wire, and finally, John McSherry. So let's end on this one. One more umpire card to show you. It's that of right field umpire in the All-Star game, Fred Brocklander. Brocklander had a tough road to the show, spent 10 years in the minors until he got a shot. A strike in 1979 was his opportunity, and Brocklander said, you know what, to heck with it. I am crossing the picket line. I want my chance at the show. Became a major league umpire and actually paid a real price for it. Once the strike was settled, veteran umps, they wouldn't even look at him. They wouldn't speak to him. His own crew, they would have nothing to do with him. He had a hard road, was ostracized for crossing the lines. But I'll be honest, man. Who wants to be in minor league ump? Way cooler to be in the show. What's he known for? Well, he was not behind the plate like Lee Wire was when Rose broke the record, but he was at second base that day. And here he is shown on a 1990 T&M umpiring card for your viewing pleasure. Pretty plain card, but, it's an umpire card. All right. What an episode. I am exhausted. I hope I can sleep tonight. I think this is a good place to end. Gone 30 minutes. Talked about drugs, parrots, umpires. There's a game looming out there somewhere, and I want you to be a part of it. If you like this episode, give me a like, subscribe, leave comments, tell friends, whatever. If it's your thing, if you are one of my Jewish sisters and brothers, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And to everybody, everywhere, all the time, may you enjoy health and long life. So long for now.